Hey, good morning, class. Welcome in. We're going to start our third video lecture today. We're going to look at the Northern Renaissance. So we looked at Italy. We looked at essentially this era of Enlightenment and new sciences, new art, new literature. Well, that Renaissance is going to move into the North. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that shift. So again, on this opening slide, you see good old Bill Shakespeare. We got William Shakespeare there. Going to be a huge component of the Northern Renaissance. Okay, so by 1455, cities in Northern Europe began to grow again after basically the aftermath of the bubonic plague and the Hundred Years' War. So they, for many years, well over 100 years, had gone through death, disease, destruction. Now they're trying to kind of restart, much like Italy, but again, this era took a little bit longer in terms of its restart. Now, urban merchants became very wealthy and started to sponsor artists. All right, England and France were well-established monarchies at this point as well. These rulers would sponsor the artists and often sent work invitations to some of the most influential Italian artists. Therefore, the Renaissance began to spread into Northern Europe. Participants began using realism, and this led to ideas of social reform based on Christian values. So remember, again, Christianity is still dominant throughout the area, but all of a sudden, taking in some of these new ideas, these new influences, they're starting to blend the two a little bit. Okay, so artistic ideas spread. In 1494, a French king claimed the throne of Naples. Okay, he launched an invasion through northern Italy. This forced a lot of Italian artists into other parts of Europe. Remember, again, a lot of the highly paid artists were in northern Italy. Now all of a sudden they're kind of scattered and they're moving throughout the rest of Europe. German and Flemish artists brought forth new ideas of art in the north. Now, these are going to start including portrayals of classic myths, realistic landscapes, and oil paintings. Okay, so paintings were now rich with color and would depict daily life. This could include weddings, a dance, harvest. The best example of this would be Peasant Wedding by Peter Bruegel. Okay, so here's again an example of Peasant Wedding, and again, it's kind of it's catching everybody in the act, and it's a painting that's representing an activity that's going on. You've got the servers, you've got people at the tables that are getting ready to eat. So essentially, again, the artists are depicting real life and real world examples and scenarios. Okay, this is a really good one from this era. Now, Northern writers are starting to try to reform society. Now, Italian humanists were interested in reviving classical languages and texts. However, in the North, Northern humanists are more interested in critiquing the teachings of the church. So once again, the church being put to question. They started a movement known as Christian humanism. Okay, the biggest change brought about this movement was a re-emphasis on education. So people are hitting the books. People want to get back into learning. Okay, and that's something that's going to be incredibly important. Now, schools were established, and both men and women could attend. A Christian humanist by the name of Desiderius Erasmus believed it was best that everybody in society should study the Bible and improve society. So everybody should have a Bible. They should go home. They should read it. That should impact others. And again, those kind of positive notations should be put into a society. Okay. Now, Thomas More saw a different vision of society. In 1516, he wrote Utopia. So this is a book about an ideal land with no greed, no corruption, no crime, no war. Utopians basically had little use of money as well. So essentially, he's trying to create or basically portray a perfect society. Okay. Now, women would also challenge the status quo as well. And also, again, think about Thomas More. We're going to come back to him later. A writer by the name of Christine de Pizan. She challenged men and felt that women should have equal education and the same opportunities as men in society. So a fair and equal education and the ability to be in the workforce, work as a merchant, work in these guilds, and have an equal say in terms of involvement. Now, the Elizabethan age. Okay, Queen Elizabeth would reign in England from 1558 to 1603. This era was where the Renaissance took off in England. Elizabeth I was well educated. She was fluent in French, Latin, Italian, and Greek. Remember, we talk about a lot of Europeans being fluent in multiple languages. She also wrote poetry and music. During her time as queen, she had a ton of support toward English art and literature. The most famous writer of the Elizabethan age, without a doubt, would be William Shakespeare. Okay, now Shakespeare provided the public with vivid plays that utilized both tragedy and comedy. Okay, his plays depicted the human condition and would be satirical of several historical events. So he creates a lot of satire. He creates a lot of, kind of critiques of major historical events, including, Julius Caesar. Okay, now Shakespeare wrote 37 plays. His most famous tragedies, some of you might be familiar with, includes Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet. The comedies include A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Taming of the Shrew, Much Ado About Nothing, and the historical plays include Henry V, Richard III, and, as I mentioned, Julius Caesar. So, again, here are Elizabeth I and William Shakespeare. All right, so while this is going on in England, all right, we're going to start seeing a major invention that's going to occur elsewhere in Europe. Now, the Chinese invented block printing, okay, in which a printer would carve words or letters on a wooden block. They would ink the block, and then they would use it to print on paper. This method would be modified during the Renaissance. Johannes Gutenberg, a craftsman from Germany, developed a machine that basically produced print in a faster, more efficient way. Using this method, Gutenberg printed the complete Bible in 1455. This became known as the Gutenberg Bible. It was the first full-size book made by movable print. Okay, think about how fast information is able to spread now. Okay, for the first time, books were mass-produced. At first, it was mostly religious texts, things that centered around the Bible. But as the years went on, travel guides, medical manuals would be distributed. This allowed for a new network of communication. It allowed ideas to spread rapidly, sometimes dangerously. Okay, the world was forever changed by this invention. Think about how fortunate we are with our phones to have info in 2 seconds. Now, the printing press under Gutenberg is going to really change the game. So, again, here is a couple of depictions of the printing press. You can see the different components. You got the hind rail assembly, you've got the carriage, you got the foot assembly, the tympan and frisket. You've got all these different little components. Then you also have an example of some workers who are working on the print, all right, and getting these things pressed, getting the paper printed, and getting it, essentially ushered in for production, and they're going to stitch these together into a book or bind them into a book. There's our guy, Johannes Gutenberg, right there. Okay, so what kind of legacy does the Renaissance have? All right, kind of coming to a conclusion here. All right, the Renaissance brought multiple artistic and social changes to Europe and the rest of the world. Art became more realistic. It focuses on the individual, as we've talked about, and it's a nod to classic Greek and Roman works. Printing made communication and information easier than ever. Again, for better or worse. Books were being distributed at an astonishing rate, unbelievable rate. All right, learning and education now became paramount. So prior to this, again, education was kind of an afterthought. Now everyone's trying to learn. Everyone's trying to pick up a book. They're trying to read. They want to improve themselves. A new desire for exploration and discovery would intensify because of these advancements. So we're going to see the scientific revolution coming up next week. All of a sudden, boom, scientific and mathematical ideas are starting to emerge from this. Okay? Now, people began to question political and religious structures through print and communication. So, this would lead to new clashes that would extend into the discovery of the new world. Exploration is going to be key. It's going to be vital. But at the same time, again, now that we have a printing press, people are going to be very judgmental, especially of the church. And this is going to lead into a lot of issues and tension. Okay? All right, folks. Hey, we are going to have our third journal log, and we're also going to get into our project, Renegades of the Renaissance. So I'm really excited for that. I hope you folks have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.